Good evening. I am Sarah Holland, Plymouth Rotarian and moderator for this evening's Meet the Candidates 2020 here on Pemmy Baker Television. We will be hearing from candidates running for a variety of offices, of which you will vote on Tuesday, November 3rd, only a few short days away. This evening's format is recorded as we are following the CDC's COVID-19 protocol, and we will be socially distanced outside the studio, with those in attendance being only the candidates, producer, student intern, and myself. The evening will include 4 distinct segments: Executive Council District 1 candidates, State Senate District 2 candidates, County Commissioner District 3 candidates, and House District 8 candidates. Each candidate will give a brief introduction, and all candidates will be asked a series of questions solicited from the Plymouth Area Democrats, Plymouth Area Republicans, PSU College Democrats, and PSU College Republicans. Before we begin, I'd like to thank our host, Pemmy Baker Television, for making this evening possible and providing a nonpartisan platform for the greater Plymouth community. It is important to note that all candidates running in the races represented this evening were contacted for participation in this discussion. Those who responded are present here tonight. Now, in Rotary, we have a 4-way test for things we think, say, or do, a moral code for personal and professional relationships. This test can be applied to almost any aspect of life, including tonight's discussion. The 4 questions one must ask themselves are: is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? And will it be beneficial to all concerned? I would ask that all candidates keep the 4-way test in mind this evening as we move forward with what we all hope to be a dynamic discussion. Stay tuned for Meet the Candidates 2020 coming up next on Pemmy Baker Television. Welcome. This is Executive Council District 1. Welcome, candidates. We're going to start off with opening remarks, and if you would start first, Joe Kenny.
Thank you, Sarah. Well, thank you for everybody for putting this on here tonight. I'm Joe Kenny. I'm running for Executive Counselor. I was your former Executive Counselor for 5 years. And the reason really why I'm running is because I've sensed on the council there's been kind of a Washington-style partisan politics that's entered council. And over the last couple of years, I've been hearing that that constituent service has not been up to par in the district. Particularly, I've been fielding a constituent service request for 2 years. I got another call here today, which I'm following up on. And so that is indication that the current executive counselor is not really doing his job. I'm also very concerned that the current executive council never attended budget hearings. That's part of the state process where you advocate for resources that you bring back into your district. And without you showing up to the capital budget committee hearings, the capital budget or the regular budget hearings, you can't advocate for your district. So that was another concern. I was also very concerned that the Ray Burton internship program was, Michael Cryans didn't do anything with it the last year. Ray Burton is someone who went to this institution here at Plymouth State University, and that 40-year legacy was broken. And I want to reinstitute that particular internship program. But again, I just want to put people above politics, and I love the job, and I want to go back and work hard and make it a full-time position.
Councillor Cryans.
Hi, I'm Mike Cryans, and I am currently the Executive Counselor for District 1, which is 109 towns and 4 cities. It's kind of the biggest portion of the state. It's about 2/3 of the length of the state. And I have found during the pandemic especially, it has been such a challenge to, not me personally, but to the people dealing with all of the issues, unemployment, businesses struggling. And for all that, I decided that I really want to go back because I've enjoyed helping, because I think the linchpin of being in this office is being there for people. There's an axiom out there that says the further north you're from Concord, the more you feel forgotten. And I want to make sure that people that live in District 1 are not forgotten, so therefore I'm running.
Thank you very much. The next question is an icebreaker question. If you could have one talent that you do not currently possess, what would it be? Councillor Cryans.
Sure. I think I would love to have been able to play the piano.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah.
I like that one.
Wow. I wish I could speak many languages. That's probably one of the biggest talents that I wish I had. I was je parle français un peu, but I wasn't very good in my French as well, enough to get along. But I think that would allow me to communicate to more people in the district. I know I traveled as an executive counselor many times to Canada to work on different trade missions and to encourage jobs to come down into the district. And being fluent in French would have been very helpful. So, and I understand Plymouth State University has a wonderful French program.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay, so we're getting into the tough questions now.
Okay.
So, Joe Kenny, what political issues have you been working on in the past 2 years?
Well, obviously I've been out of office, but been fielding a lot of constituent requests from healthcare to roads to environmental permits. But I think the biggest issue that, or some of them that I worked on, was trying to advocate for the low energy power plants. There were many bills in the legislature that I attended the hearings. As you know, a lot of our low power energy plants, one in Whitefield, Bethlehem, Tamworth, and Springfield are closed right now. So there was a bill in Concord to try to help keep those things running and alive. Unfortunately, the bill didn't make it. That was one issue. I worked with my local nonprofit, the Greater Wakefield Resource Center, writing grants. That was very rewarding. I also, I think I became an advocate for different issues in the district, particularly for roads and infrastructure and economic development. I was helping out with the Gorham paper with a lot of regulatory issues that involved OSHA. And so anytime there was a business that needed help, they were familiar with me because I'd worked as their executive counsel for 5 years, understood state government, and basically I'm the one who helped confirmed all the commissioners that are still in place today for the most part.
Councillor Cryans.
Well, probably the main issue is just fulfilling the job. When you say political issues, I think of some of the opportunities that we've had to serve people is certainly probably the key component, as I mentioned in my opening remarks, the constituent service portion. But also, I try to encourage people to run for commissions and boards. Also, when the governor nominates someone, make sure that that person's qualified to fill the position. There's been some kind of pushback because we turned down the governor's nominee for the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. Gordon MacDonald's a wonderful person, but I didn't think he was qualified to hold the job because he had no judicial experience. So the governor has chosen to leave the position open, and hopefully if I am re-elected, and go back, I will be able to convince the governor to put up a nominee that we feel that could get approved.
Excellent. Thank you. How has COVID-19 changed the interaction between you and your constituents?
Phenomenally. The easiest way is to say phenomenally changed. The idea of traveling around and just popping in towns is no longer there. For a while, you didn't even want to go into a community because people were so concerned about the interaction with person to person. The good news is, in District Number 1, which runs the length, 2/3 of the state, of all the 450 deaths, only about 10 have occurred in District 1. I can't take credit for this statement, but somebody was on TV one night and artfully said, we've been social distancing long before it was popular. So how do you handle it? Phone, Zoom, email, that's basically it. But the phone would ring off the hook sometimes, and I'll just share one story. A young woman called me and asked for my assistance in getting employment security to give her a check. She had been without a check for 6 weeks, and her words were, I didn't have a lot of money when I was working, and now I don't have any money coming in. 2 small kids, you can just feel the concerns and the pressure and the stress she must have been under. And but when you come home at some nights, my wife says, I love hearing those, the thank you notes. I just got my check. And you can almost feel the relief. And so I guess that's how he's changed things. But you know, if you are adaptive, I look at little kids heading off to school, how they adapt. I think I can adapt by going Zoom, which I didn't even know the word a while ago.
And for you, Joe Kenny?
Well, for me, constituents can reach out to you in many different ways. They can reach out to you via email, they can do texting, they can go to social media, they can do the telephone, or they can do the mail. So in that regard, nothing has changed. The only thing that's changed is that if you want to meet someone, you go to a local coffee shop and you do your social distancing, have your mask on, take your notes. But for the most part, the constituent side of the thing hasn't changed. What really has changed really is meeting people at the senior centers who, the senior centers are a treasure in the state of New Hampshire. And I haven't been able to go to do constituent requests at the senior centers because most of them have closed down and they only have kind of a go out in the parking lot delivery service or Meals on Wheels. So that's been a game changer for me because I love that population. I love the fact that New Hampshire feeds them, they socialize, and they get a lot of great information at the senior center, so I miss that a lot.
How do you plan to provide affordable higher education on or offline so New Hampshire's graduates are not saddled with debt?
It's a huge issue. I just had a year ago a graduate of college myself. The kids that are going to school today, many are coming out of school with a phenomenal amount of debt. I think it's an issue that has to be tackled at the national level. I don't think it's a state issue that we can tackle, but I think there has to be something done to reward people that take certain positions in life, whether they go into areas that need young people to go in and they make that sacrifice because they're making less money, that there be some kind of formula to reduce their student debt. You take kids that are coming out, and I hear stories a lot of times where kids come out of school with $100,000 in debt. I've never had that much debt in buying a house, and they're just paying, and then you couple it with a car payment and rent payment and all of the things that go along with living, and maybe even going out for pizza once in a while, you just realize there's probably never enough money. So I know it's been discussed at the federal level. Hopefully something will be developed that will help reduce some of the student debt.
And for you, Joe Kenny?
That's a great question. The way I think you can do that is make education a little bit more affordable. I know that, for instance, Southern New Hampshire University has one of the best online programs in the country. PSU has a wonderful online program as well. When it comes to incentivizing young people to join the military, whether education can be paid for, or if they go into a profession that allows them to get education at night, or if there's a buyback kind of system where if you work as a nurse for 2 or 3 years, that will buy back and pay for your education. Creating those types of programs that would help out. I know in the Mount Washington Valley, they have the Leadership Academy, and if you get a scholarship with them, it goes directly to student debt. So there are different ways of, I think, approaching it, but the old-fashioned way is the Joe Kenny way. I worked my way through college, and my son, who is a student here at Plymouth State University, forgot to bring out that fact, he's working part-time while he's going through college, so he has extra spending money. And I think you're always going to have kind of a work-to-school program in order to get through college. Not all of us were brought up with a silver spoon, and we're not fortunate enough to write a check and have it all be paid for at once.
Thank you. Given the impending revenue shortfalls from the COVID-19 pandemic, how do you anticipate adjustments will be made to compensate? Budget cuts, layoffs, and the like?
That's a great question, Sarah, because I'm a public servant and a father, a family, 2 kids and my wife, and you never want to lose your job. So I would fight to keep jobs. There's ways to slow down capital projects for the next cycle that helps save money. There's a way to maybe not backfill a position to save money in state government. But more importantly, at the executive council level, we deal with about $5.2 billion worth of spending. So you're going to look for different ways to come up with savings, more competitive bid processing, maybe holding back on a few contracts, but also always remembering that essential services in trying to protect jobs for the citizens of New Hampshire is the biggest priority.
Councillor Cryans.
Well, for the council, we approve the contracts when they come through. So everything from a small contract that might help a substance misuse. As I drove by Katy, I can think of them maybe getting $50,000 or $100,000 to all the way up to Medicaid expansion, which was $960 million, the largest contract ever put out. It's going to be interesting how we handle it, because we're going to make choices. The unfortunate thing in New Hampshire historically, when cuts have to be made, unfortunately they're made at Health and Human Services because it's half the budget. And if you look at it as I do, it's probably the last place it should be cut. We're in a health crisis. We're in struggles with people, and we're going to tell them that we're going to cut some of these programs. So I hope that some of the contracts that come through will be handled in such a way that we don't put the pressure back on the people who can least afford it. The other thing is we're seeing, because of fewer gas miles and all of this, some impact on the roads and bridges that have to be repaired. New Hampshire, I think the mistake we made when things were going real well, we should have put more money into infrastructure. And now we're going to struggle. And the argument will be, we can't do it now because we're struggling. So it's a bad situation.
Thank you. And you touched on this earlier, but I wanted to jump into it a little bit deeper. Since June 2019, there has been an open seat on the state Supreme Court. The Executive Council voted against Governor Sununu's appointment 3-2, and the governor has not made another appointment since. If you're elected again to the Executive Council, how can you ensure the state has a full bench to rule on the cases that come before the court?
Well, there's an interesting dynamics. The governor nominates, and we either approve or disapprove. So the governor, it's really in the governor's court. He should nominate someone. I've actually given him a recommendation. I thought a person would be great for the job. He has chosen not to do that. He has chosen to keep the position open. We can't force the governor to nominate someone. If he nominates someone, and I would like to have some input, whether it's the current governor or Dan Feltus wins that position. I'd like to feel that they would sit down with the council and talk about someone and make sure that that person can get approved. Because I don't think it's fair to the person being nominated either, because if they're nominated, they're excited about getting that job, and then they don't get it. I think especially the very highest jobs in the state, that's one of them, I'd like to see the council have a little more input. There's some argument being made that it was a political one. I don't feel that. I think we are sent there as a checks and balance on the power of the governor. And if we just rubber stamp everything through, I don't think we're doing our jobs.
And for you, Joe Kenny.
Yeah, excellent question. First of all, I support Gordon MacDonald to the state Supreme Court. So if I was elected, that would be the governor's one of his first actions. Glad to have the support of the governor in this election. He wants to put Gordon MacDonald on the state Supreme Court. He got caught up in Washington-style partisan politics, where Councilor Cryans was the deciding vote to reject him. He based it off inexperience on the bench, the court system. And Gordon MacDonald, a lot of the judges that serve around the state have used his book on civil litigation. He's highly qualified to serve on the bench. In addition, the last two people we put on the state Supreme Court, Bobby Hans Marconi and also Patrick Donovan, neither of those two had bench experience at all. So that wasn't a disqualifier. It was purely partisan politics, the reason why Gordon MacDonald was rejected. He's one of our great attorneys in the state of New Hampshire. Andrew Volinsky voted for him for Attorney General, but wouldn't vote for him to state Supreme Court. And that's because the council majority had shifted to the Democratic side, and again, partisan politics played into that.
Thank you. What issues do you see coming before the Executive Council over the next 2 years?
Well, there's several. There's going to be probably about 10 judicial appointments, at the district, superior, and state Supreme Court level, which is very critical, getting the right people with the right judicial temperament, the right background, and the, respect and support within their own community. That's going to be very key. We have the potential that we're going to have to confirm a new Commissioner of Education. We're looking at possibly a new Attorney General. We're looking at some other key commissioner positions in state government. So that's going to be, very much a focus on the council. The other thing that's going to be on the focus on the council is fiscal restraint with the contracts, knowing that we have about a $300 to $500 million shortfall in the budget. So we're going to have to look at these contracts very closely. We're going to have to continue forward with the COVID-19 contracts that are coming in to support employment, to support healthcare, support our first responders, our healthcare workers. And we're also going to look at some contracts that are going to look at the opioid crisis, which continues, although it's not as apparent because of the COVID-19 issue, but we still are fighting that issue in the state of New Hampshire. So, and I think we'll also be looking at, making sure that the government lives within its means and that we can provide the essential services. So those are kind of some of the topics that we'll be dealing with in the next couple of years.
Councillor Cryans.
I was asked that the other day, and I said to someone, if I'd have sat down 2 years ago and told you, I think we're going to have a health crisis, they're going to shut down the colleges in our areas, they're going to send the kids home, we're going to see unemployment go from 500 a week to 30,000 a week, which it did. We're going to see all of these major changes. We're going to see people go out of business. We're going to see people who had never been unemployed. People probably would have said, that's never going to happen. That's too fictitious to happen, and yet we're living. I think I would say we don't know what's going to happen with COVID-19. And until we have a better grasp, I think things are going to be in flux. There's going to be so much pressure on the schools, the children that go to schools. All of a sudden, if you've got 3 kids in school and the parents are fortunate and they're both working, and all of a sudden 1, 2, 3 kids get tossed out of school, it really changes that whole family dynamics. As a parent, you can only imagine, what do I do now? 1 kid's going to school, 1 kid isn't because their school's active. So I think there's going to be a lot of things that I'm not going to sit here and try to draw up a litany of things that I think we will handle, but I think until we get COVID-19 under control, we get a vaccine, we get something that says that we can get life back to somewhat normal, I think we're going to struggle. And I think the winter will prove that what could happen with the idea of having the kids in school in confined space, is that going to make it worse instead of better? So only time will tell.
Thank you. Okay, that has ended our question and answer portion, and I will allow 1 minute of a summary statement.
Sure. Well, I have been working very hard. I do this full time. I don't have another job. I have loved every moment of it, and I probably should have said when I was asked, why am I running? Because I thoroughly enjoy the job. I think you can make a difference in a lot of people's lives, and because of all those reasons, I'm going to turn to the viewers and say, I'd like you to consider me when you go into the ballot box and vote. I'm going to throw out something else. If you have taken an absentee ballot, which roughly 200,000 people as of the taping have, please make sure you get them back. Don't hold on to them. It was kind of interesting. I was talking to somebody and she said, I forgot to get my ballot back in the primary. So please return your primary, your absentee ballot, and if you are voting in person, I ask for your vote. So thank you, and thank you for the cable access for viewing this tonight.
And for you, Joe Kenny.
Well, the reason why I'm running again is to keep, to put people above politics. We've seen a lot of things in state government, particularly on the council, that really kind of display Washington-style politics. The rejection of Gordon MacDonald. The reason why doesn't Michael Cryans come out and say, am I going to support the commutation of Michael Addison, who killed a police officer in Manchester? He's staying quiet on that. There's been too many votes that abstained. The one on the Pam Smart commutation public hearing, Mr. Cryans did not vote on that. The David Mara, Chief of Police of Manchester, that was supposed to be a position so he would oversee the Hillsborough County Attorney's Office. Again, Mr. Cryans abstained. never really gave a reason. The fact that Ryan Terrell was rejected, the first Black American to be nominated to the State Board of Education, was rejected because of partisan politics. So from my standpoint, I just want to serve the people of the district, put people above politics, and do the best job I can, and I ask for your vote on November 3rd.
Thank you very much. Thank you
Thank
to
you,
the
Sarah.
candidates for being here with us this evening and sharing their passion for serving the communities of New Hampshire. Stay tuned. Up next, we have the State Senate District 2. Welcome to State Senate District 2, and the candidates that I have with me this evening are Senator Bob Guida, the incumbent, and Mr. Bill Bolton. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you.
So we'll start off with opening remarks, and that's going to be 1.5 minutes, and that's going to go to you first, Senator Bob Guida.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here tonight as we again exercise the rights of a democratic republic to give you the option to see candidates and to understand and better comprehend the differences in positions between us. They are remarkable tonight. I've served 2 terms in the New Hampshire Senate, 4 years. First term was on the Finance and Ways and Means Committees, as well as Education. Second term, Finance and Ways and Means Committees, as well as Energy and Natural Resources. All 3 very important committees. As we have come through this COVID pandemic, I have been very active in the Governor's Economic Reopening Task Force, working hundreds of hours, literally, with a team of people that helped to produce the guidelines for all the different industries in the state to reopen, given the concerns for our health and the sanitary procedures that are required to minimize the effects of COVID as best we can, at the same time while opening up our economy. In the next biennium, we're going to face a very serious fiscal crisis, and I think the skill sets that I have will come in very handy in terms of both taxation and in terms of the finances, having helped write 2 state budgets. Those will be important assets to our state as we move forward through this pandemic and the economic duress that's going to be coming upon us. I ask for your vote on November 3rd. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bolton.
Thank you. And I also thank PBTV for hosting this event. I'm Bill Bolton. My wife Denise and I and our 4 kids live in Plymouth. We've lived here most of my life, all of theirs. And I'm a 30-year retired state employee. I ran for the New Hampshire State Senate in 2018. I'm running once again primarily because of the COVID pandemic. I think my 30 years experience in state government, partnered with my municipality experience, I'm currently the chair of the Plymouth Select Board, pretty much contribute to a successful, your clock is frozen. I'm sorry. So regardless, my public health background and my municipal experience will definitely help focus families on both education and seeking to assure a livable wage in New Hampshire. And also businesses and families need the help that I could offer them while I'm in the Senate. I think we are at a disadvantage currently because, okay, man.
Thank you for your time. All right, so we're going to move into an icebreaker question to get our juices flowing here. So I'm sure you don't spend too much time in front of the television, but if you were to find the time, what movie could you not pass up watching as you're flipping through the channels? And this will go first to you, Mr. Bolt.
A movie. I was going to think The Office, but the Office is just a string of shows. But good question. And flashing 0, so I must be out of time.
I'll take The Office. That's a great answer. Senator Guida.
Yeah, I'm a John Wayne fan. And I would probably say that Sons of Katie Elder would probably be my favorite movie to watch.
Excellent. Thank you. All right. Question 1. What political issues have you been working on in the past 2 years, Senator Guida?
Well, there have been many of them. I've worked very hard to systemically look at the major problems we're facing. We have a huge housing crisis in our state. And for that reason, I sponsored a bill that took actually 2 terms and 3 years to get through, establishing a state housing appeals board that will review challenged decisions by local land use boards while still maintaining local control, but just making sure that those boards are in compliance with state workforce housing rules and their own local ordinances. I've worked hard on, of course, the reopening task force, worked hard on the budgets. I've also worked hard with Senator Cindy Rosenwald on healthcare issues, specifically trying to reduce prescription drug costs and working on raising the compensation for Medicaid for our caregivers. They're dreadfully underpaid. In fact, I just finished a conference call today, a Zoom call with Pathways, discussing that issue and committing to working constructively to make sure our developmentally disabled are fully funded, as well as the acquired brain injury folks as well get the funding they need to maintain their care as we go through a fiscal crisis.
Thank you. Mr. Bolton.
As far as political things that I've been doing, at least in the last couple of years, I've been focusing on climate change. And the effects of climate change, and I'm the chair of the Pemigewasset River Local Advisory Committee. And as chair of the PERLAC, I was also a member of the Plymouth Climate Emergency Coalition, and I've focused on promoting practices that reduce the effects of climate change. I especially want to thank the Sierra Club for providing me an endorsement of my run for the New Hampshire State Senate. And when I'm elected, I will support legislation that will reduce a carbon footprint. It takes bold action to reduce our role in contributing to climate change while protecting and conserving New Hampshire's environmental ecosystems. Also, in the past couple of years, as chair of PERLAC and also the Select Board, we ended up becoming interveners for the Northern Pass Project. And the Northern Pass Project was going to be coming down through the state of New Hampshire, right down through our main street in Plymouth. And we became interveners to basically try to stop the project from pretty much destroying several businesses in downtown Plymouth. And because of our testimony, the day prior to them closing the project down, I think we had a lot to contribute to the project itself. And I'll get into the swing of things. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you. How has COVID-19 changed the interactions between you and your constituents, Mr. Bolton?
So our constituents, we felt, were concerned about actually seeing us. Doing door knocking. So the last time I ran, 2018, we ended up knocking on 4,000 doors in 27 towns. And I felt that might bring concern to the citizens in our district for the fact that, I'm sure they don't want to see a politician standing at the door knocking to explain the issues that are at hand. So we've basically taken a heavy reliance on Zoom calls and other techniques to interact with constituents. And when I ran in 2018, we ended up doing a lot of events like also parades and house parties. Well, that had to have stopped. And the only thing that was left available to us, which we kind of pursued, was things like we did an ice cream tour of the district. And we stopped at local ice cream shops. We also had a Bolton's Band Night, which was a Zoom affair. We had like local musicians play. And we also had a district-spanning trolley tour that allowed me to borrow a trolley from a local restaurateur. And we ended up visiting about 12 towns in the district, spanning the whole district. And basically, too, articles and letters to the editor are very effective ways to get my message out as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Gaida.
Sure. I've taken a different tack. I've gone door to door, and I will continue to do so. Standing outside and 10 to 12 feet away, there's no risk. And people in this state and in this district are very comfortable speaking with me. I've had virtually no problem with any of the people that I've spoken to in the 27 towns I'm campaigning in. They're glad to see someone who wants to represent them put forth the effort to come to their door and talk about the issues that are important to them. I too have done, and am using social media letters to the editor, op-eds, and so forth to convey my message and to portray the differences between Mr. Bolton and myself, which are quite remarkable. It's been an interesting campaign in the sense that there have been very few parades and celebratory events of that nature, but still reaching out and talking to people one-on-one is I think, the best way to get my message across and to have them put their trust in me when it comes time to vote on November 3rd.
Thank you. How do you plan to provide affordable higher education on or offline so New Hampshire's graduates are not saddled with debt? Mr. Bolton.
New Hampshire has some of the highest in-state tuition costs in the country, and our graduates are pretty much saddled with the most debt nationally. In 2018, 76% of the graduating class from New Hampshire's colleges had an unprecedented level of debt that exceeded $36,000. So graduates are holding off marriage, purchasing houses, investing in the stock market, basically to try to pay off a mortgage-worthy debt, which takes years to do. So when elected to the Senate, I will examine how best to reduce college interest rates as well as the high costs of obtaining a degree from the New Hampshire university system. And I want to focus on the university system because, unfortunately, they are paid the least amount of state aid. They are given 8% for the whole university system per student. I want to get it up to the national average of like 11 to 15%, so that the state norms will assure that the tuition burden will be lessened on our students. And one contributing factor as well is like PSU is doing a very good experiment as far as like bringing up businesses and corporations to do advanced degrees, creating a makerspace that will allow them to do robotics for the students. And that would give students a chance to get a high-tech job and be able to stay in the state with an assurance that there will be a job in their corporation when they graduate. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Senator Gaida.
Sure. The state of New Hampshire, the legislature conveys about $162 million every biennium to the university system, which is a small amount. But the way you reduce costs in the university system is the same way you reduce costs anywhere else, is to go through the system and find the fat and trim it. That has not been done. I worked very hard with President Burks of PSU to try to get him more funding. He's done a good job at reducing costs. That includes, unfortunately, having to reduce staff that's not necessary. He's also repurposing PSU towards a much more high-tech focus to meet the demands of the 21st century and the high-tech world we live in and provide those high-paying jobs. But the costs of the university system are established by the university system, and it's not the legislature's job to reduce those. It's the university system's management, and they've been told that numerous times by the legislature, both parties. So, again, what we would do, I would be talking to banks that give loans to these kids with no job, and many of these degrees will never have a job that can ever repay those. So there's got to be a sense of fiscal responsibility on the part of the banks and on the part of the university system that encourages these kids to take these loans. That's what I would do. I'd look to the folks that provide the loans to be responsible in presenting the realities of the possibilities of repayment.
Thank you. New Hampshire also has one of the highest electric utility costs in the nation. What is your solution to lowering utility costs while making sure New Hampshire keeps the lights on? And that goes to Senator Gaida.
Thank you. I serve on the Energy and Natural Resources Committee in the Senate, and we look at this virtually every day. One of the bills that I opposed was a bill that would raise the requirement for energy that is sustainable and reducing our carbon footprint, but unrealistically. The problem right now is we don't have the storage capacity, the battery technology is not there, and as we reduce these carbon-emitting plants, we lose baseline capacity, which is then very expensive to replace when the out-of-state generators have to provide it. Wind energy does not work, it is not financially feasible, and has been proven so. Solar energy will work, but it can't work on a massive scale yet. I've also supported legislation and strongly to raise the cap on net metering to 5 megawatts, which would substantially enable small solar systems to become more viable commercially in a small sense.
Thank you. Mr. Bolton.
I would agree with Senator Gaida as far as like raising it to 5 megawatts, and I think it should have been done last session as well. I'd also encourage municipalities to put up renewable energy projects. Plymouth has been trying to do that for a couple of years now, and I think we'll be successful in the next year or so, similar to Holderness. As far as why our costs are so high, we're actually 45th in state cost per state. Well, cost of energy per state, and I think it's the problem is that we're a non-generator state. We just basically contribute. I mean, we just basically we're not a producer. We're a receiver. So we're not like the Midwest where they have multiple producers and a lot of choice, and the energy price goes down. So we're kind of stuck with the fact that we'll have a higher price regardless. But finding renewable energy projects that would offset the need for fairly expensive electricity is obviously the way to pursue.
Thank you. Given the impending revenue shortfalls from the COVID-19 pandemic, how do you anticipate adjustments will be made to compensate, including budget cuts or layoffs? And that goes to Mr. Bolton.
Well, I'm a 30-year retired state employee. I think budget shortfalls were pretty much the chronic thing that we had to deal with almost every biennium. And we never had a budget year that actually we had flush staffing, equipment, travel. So we constantly live with like staff reductions and returning on unobligated funds at the end of the fiscal year. It's also been the case with our municipality as well, where we have increased property taxes over the years to make up for reduced state shared revenue and state adequacy aid for education. And my focus is on economic development. I also realize that we must rely on federal help to help us get through this, because we're going to be faced with devastating revenue shortfalls when the COVID pandemic is ended and realized. And I support the governor's hiring freeze. I think at this point we need to be frugal. I think there is, once we actually have a strong economy, and once again we'll have little unemployment, I think at that point then we can start freeing up state agencies. I also think that the CARES funds help our small businesses and our municipalities, and they give them a helping hand. And our revenue loss is due to COVID, and the banks were able to bail out the bank. The banks, yeah, okay. It's too bad I can't have a redo on this, but go for it.
Thanks, Mr. Bolton. All right, Senator Guida, same question.
Thanks for the question. It is a difficult question, and it's a very real question. We're going to face a shortfall, and there aren't many nice options. Governor Sununu has already asked his departments to submit budgets that reflect what our estimations of that shortfall will be. I would anticipate certainly the hiring freeze that's already in effect, but I would anticipate as well the possibility of having to adjust employment levels within the different agencies. There is a silver lining, if that can be said, and that is it will require us to take a good hard look at all state agencies, find those that really aren't necessary any longer, and try to repurpose those for new projects or new needs that arise. And unfortunately, we may have to eliminate some agencies. Those agencies that do survive will need to be more efficient, incorporate more technology, more modern technology, and to streamline them, to streamline the processes. And again, infrastructure is a concern. I'm sure we'll see some consolidation of office space, and we'll see some reductions, I think, in equipment purchases. The governor froze capital expenditures in order to see what the outcome's going to be, and whether or not we may be able to offset capital expenditures and put those revenues in place for operating budgets to try to minimize the reductions that may have to come. But there's no easy answer to this. My pledge is that I will be looking at policies and at departments and at services that are necessary. For example, in our conference call this afternoon with Pathways, to protect those that are vulnerable and unable to care for themselves, make sure those funds remain, and other programs and projects that aren't necessary will probably have to take the hit.
Thank you. With New Hampshire having some of the highest property taxes in the nation, what solutions do you have to support our schools, which make up the majority of our tax bill, while preserving the homeownership dream? This goes to you, Senator Gaida.
Sure, that's a good question. I serve on the school board in Warren, have for a number of years, and of course as Vice Chair of Education in my first term in the Senate. We look at this problem right now, the focus seems to be on the money, but there's much more to it. Our towns have been getting less revenue because our student population has declined over 20% in the last 15 years. So we have a declining population with an adequacy formula that's based on the number of students in your district. So if the number of students goes down, the amount of money you get goes down. Your fixed costs aren't going down. And so that's the crunch we're in. We need to take a holistic approach. We're going to have to start looking at things like possibility of regional schools, of consolidation. In Warren, in our school, we are teaching first and second grades with one teacher and an aide as opposed to two teachers. And so innovation will be required. I think technology would play a big role. I've been a leader in getting broadband out to Danbury and Bristol, worked hard to get them their loans, and worked hard to get House Bill 1111 passed. That will enable communities to partner with providers and bring broadband to every home in the community. That's not been possible before. So, but as far as the education costs, we've got to take a holistic approach because looking at it strictly from a money standpoint will not solve the problem.
Thank you. Mr. Bolton.
Okay, excuse me, the state is paying for, is failing to pay for an adequate education, actually. And according to the Department of Education data, districts spend about $19,000, or should be spending about $19,000 per pupil. The state's per pupil base adequacy aid of around $3,700 doesn't cover what the districts should have been provided in order for students to receive an adequate education. So instead of a base adequacy, aid should be close to $10,000, and this is the premise that Conval school districts claim, that the state must double the amount of aid that it sends to school districts. Sometime in 2021, the state Supreme Court will issue a ruling on this suit. Additionally, by the first of next year, the Commission to Study School Funding will release its recommendations for improving the allocation of school aid and also offer suggestions for revenue sources to fund increased aid. So I would recommend the Commission's, I would support the Commission's recommendations as long as it doesn't pit property-rich donor towns against property-poor towns. But I think the key here, though, is that as a parent, that municipalities are carrying the heavy load as far as like, the expense for their school systems. And, our adequacy aid for Plymouth is being, lost. And the fact that our property taxes have been going up almost year after year is not due to inefficient use of the monies or grandiose projects that Plymouth is doing. It's very similar to every other of the 26 towns in the district. The fact that we're just expected to carry more of a load on our property taxpayers. And that's specifically a legislative issue. And in the time where the legislature is expressing boomtown, monies coming in, we've been having less and less monies that come to our towns. And I want to change that.
Thank you. If elected to the legislature this term, what would you do to continue the much-needed rollout of broadband to ensure internet access for all communities in New Hampshire? And would you go beyond broadband? And this is to you, Mr. Bolton, to start.
So it's not only broadband, it's also cell phone service as well. And there are many disparate activities going on in the state right now. And there are, as far as like Bob mentioning House Bill 1111, that only goes so far. And it's very similar to what counties are now doing. The Grafton County Commission, as well as the Carroll County Commission, are already allowing for a broadband, a bonding authority for towns that want to group together to form a communication program that would allow them to pursue funding. That's all well and good as well. That the county's banding together. House Bill 1111, that's great. But the fact is, there's no oversight. There's no clear plan that will allow us to go forward with broadband. And obviously, it's the most critical time with COVID, with school systems that are releasing children to go home to do school at home, and if they have no broadband, they're at extreme disadvantage. It also goes with people that work from home as well. and for telehealth. That's becoming more and more popular. If you don't have to go in the doctor's office to get treatment, then just go online and visit your doctor. Now, that is atrocious that we have so much last mile issues in New Hampshire where people are subject to, facing, a disadvantage. So when I am senator, I will initiate a bill that will essentially create a broadband plan, and ultimately we will roll out broadband for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Gaida.
Sure. Broadband is a complex issue, but we should never be in a position to mandate that businesses lose money to provide a service. It is an essential service. This is the origin of House Bill 1111, which enables communities, as either individually or with groups of other communities, to band together and by votes of their respective legislative bodies or respective voters, to engage in bonding authority to both install and then to update over time those things. We're not going to solve this problem at once. There are areas where it's just not financially feasible. I think the federal government plays a role here too. They collect taxes and fees for such things that were originally used for phones. Now they should be, in fact, I think, rolled over to take care of broadband and cell phone issues. But again, this is something we have to go careful because someone has to pay for all of this. Nice plans are nice, but when you implement them, you're going to have to find the money to pay for them. And House Bill 1111 partners communities so that they have skin in the game and they pick up a fair share along with the broadband providers picking up their fair share. That's the way to get it done. We've already passed that legislation.
Thank you. Should non-resident students domiciled on New Hampshire college and university campuses be allowed to vote in New Hampshire elections? Senator Gaida.
Sure. We have a couple of bills, Senate Bill 3 and House Bill 1264, that were taken to court. Senate Bill 3 is not in effect, but House Bill 1264, which I agreed with and co-sponsored, in fact, was a bill that says you are certainly welcome to claim residency in New Hampshire, but if you do so, you are required then to be a full resident of New Hampshire, and that includes registering your vehicles if you have them, getting your driver's license in New Hampshire, just like any other resident. We don't establish special residency requirements, although we do have special domicile requirements at our dorms and in our colleges, but residency should be one standard for everybody that's here because that's the key to voting. If you're going to vote in New Hampshire, then you should be a responsible New Hampshire citizen and follow all the laws of the state.
Thank you. Mr. Bolton.
So part of the disaffection of voters is to make some things confusing. I think we don't need to create confusion among people that vote in our state. And regarding the terms domicile and residence, they're equivalent. And even though RSA 21-6A and RSA 654:1 contain different words, they convey the same basic concept. When a person makes a town or ward in New Hampshire his or her principal place of physical presence to the exclusion of all other places, that person has established a domicile/residence. So RSA 654 relies on domicile status for a person to vote in New Hampshire, as long as you are a U.S. citizen, will be 18 years or older on the day, election day or before, and are domiciled in New Hampshire, you can vote in New Hampshire elections. So the law makes it very clear, and yes, they can vote in the state.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That concludes our question and answer period. I'll allow 1 minute statement from each of you just to summarize. We'll start with you, Mr. Bolton.
I just want to say that, I think my experience in both state government and public health and also in the municipality have given me skills to be able to lead our district in a COVID recovery, as well as economic development. And I'm looking forward to serve you as Senator, and thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you. Senator Gaida.
I think there's never been a clearer distinction between two candidates. Mr. Bolton, under whose tutelage the taxes in this town have gone up 18% while he's been on the select board, is an indicator. As an example of the spending that he professes, a $20,000 expenditure voted by the select board 4-1 last week for a wage comparison study, the information of which is contained in the state's Department of Labor. A couple of phone calls, a little bit of computer work would have saved the taxpayers $20,000. I'm very careful with your tax dollars, and they're going to be in precious short supply coming forward. I've worked very hard to expand broadband responsibly. I've worked very hard to bring over $1 million to Plymouth of the $264 million that I voted for returning to the towns and cities of this state over the last 4 years to reduce your property taxes. Well, Mr. Bolton supports such things as prevailing wage, which would require towns to pay union wages and thereby take away competitive bidding. He's voted for a $15 an hour minimum wage. He was picketing for it at the same time that the town was losing 3 years on the Highland Street project. That's not responsible leadership on the local level. That's hoping for something that you can never attain responsibly because you haven't done your job here in Plymouthville. Okay, you have left the people in the lurch, and I have saved it. The Highland Street project, I saved for your town. Okay, in my town, our property taxes are level, and they'll stay that way because we responsibly budget and we tax very carefully. I'm the candidate that's for less taxes, smaller government, and responsible government, and I ask for your vote on November 3rd. Thank you.
Mr. Bolton, would you like 30 seconds to respond?
Yeah, please. So, Bob, you're wrong, and you've been also casting, I guess, untruths, lies about me and my background and my experience. And you say I'm an advocate for, an income tax. I am not. I'll take the pledge if you need to. You also said that, you saved Highland Street. Well, actually, you didn't. And you may have had an input in it. We actually tried to engage you, but that wasn't the case. As far as the 20,000, we can keep on going back and forth. That'd be great. But as far as the 20,000 that you also say we expended needlessly because the Department of Labor has that information. Well, actually, it was free information that used to be done by the New Hampshire Municipal Association, and they no longer do that. And this was probably the cheapest way we could actually get that, fee and position description study done because there was no other option. And we needed it for union negotiations that were going on right now. So, I think you, and also you dreamed of the fact that I voted for, what was it? As assuming that I'm in the legislature. Oh, the $15 an hour, raise, or at least minimum wage. I'm not in the legislature, Bob. Maybe next year I'll have that opportunity, but I'm actually focusing on a living wage of $10 to $12 an hour. And I agree with the Senate, the majority of the Senate, when they go forward with that.
Thank you, Mr. Bolton. Senator Guida, 30 seconds to respond.
Sure. Bill, you support family medical leave, which is a 0.5% income tax on every wage earner in the state without exception to status, income, single parenthood, or anything else. That's the fact. Okay, read the bill. It's on page 2, the bottom 2 lines. As far as $15 an hour, you were holding a picket sign outside the Senate chambers. I have pictures of it. Okay, you should have been up here taking care of the Highland Street project. I called the chairman of the House committee that held those hearings at my request. I worked with your town staff to get those done, okay, while you were picketing down in Concord. As far as fiscal responsibility, $20,000 is half a year's wage for somebody. And I certainly think that a town official, a select person, or a couple of town people working on the internet could pull the information they need to find out comparable wages for similar towns for the employees of Plymouth. Mr. Bolton has spent 30 years in state government. He's not spent much time in the private sector. He doesn't have a respect for the tax dollar that you earn, that you work so hard to earn. And that's where we differ. He believes that government is the answer. I believe in the entrepreneurs and I believe in our citizens, that you have the answers and you can work through your legislature helping us to shape your future, and I will work very hard to do that. I ask for your vote on November 3rd.
Thank you, Senator Guida. Thank you both, Senator Guida and Bill Bolton, for being here with us this evening and sharing your passion for serving your community. And it is evident that there is more research for the constituents to do about these two candidates, and we do have a few more days to do it before we hit the ballot boxes. So thank you all for being here. Stay tuned, and up next we have the Grafton County Commissioner, District 2. Thank you. Welcome to Grafton County Commissioner District 2. And the candidates that I have with me this evening are Omer Ahern Jr. and incumbent Commissioner Marsha Morris. Thank you both for being here. So we'll start off with opening remarks about a minute and a half, and we'll start with you, Omer.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Good evening, everyone. I want to thank PBTV for giving us this opportunity to speak with you. Just one little correction, Sarah, that we're running in Grafton County Commissioner District 3, 17 towns, District 3. And first thing I want to do is I do want to thank my good friend Marsha Morris for serving the last 2 years as County Commissioner. It's not a really easy job. It's an important job. County commissioners have been serving in the state of New Hampshire since the 1850s after the town poor farms were discontinued. And the important thing to know about Grafton County is it is still set up the way the original county farms were set up, county homes were set up. It still has the nursing home to take care of our elderly residents who need the care. It still has the county jail and the county house of correction. And Grafton County still has an outstanding farm and woodlands operation. Dairy farm has pigs, it has chickens and lays eggs, and it has some tremendous vegetable producing capacity. And it also has about 700 plus acres of woodlands. And these are some of the things that I want to try to reconcentrate on as a county commissioner. I've served as a county commissioner in Sullivan County for 4 years back in the late 90s, and I've served also here in Grafton County 2 terms as a county commissioner. So I'm looking forward to having a chat with Marsha this evening and trying to answer the questions that Sarah will be posing to us. And again, thank you, PBTV, for giving us this opportunity.
Thank you. Commissioner Morris.
So it's wonderful to be here, and thank you, Omer, for thanking me. That's very nice of you. Omer and I are good friends, so we have a good cordial relationship, and that's wonderful. I'm running again because I think the county issues are extremely important. A lot of people in our district don't necessarily know a lot about what county government does, but it's really important. We sort of fill the gap between the municipal level, the town level kinds of services that you receive, and the state. And so there are a lot of regional issues that take place at county level. And what I want voters to know is that your county government is very well run right now. I have been extremely impressed with the department heads of all departments, the nursing home, the farm, the Department of Corrections, and our elected officials. All of them are dedicated, hardworking, brilliant people, and we are very lucky to have them all. And I love serving with my fellow commissioners, Chairman Linda Lauer and Wendy Piper, and especially County Administrator Julie Libby, who is exceptional at what she does. So taxpayers are being well served by the people who are running the county, and that's one of the messages that is really important to me to get across to everybody. And one of the reasons why I want to continue doing this job, which I love, is because we have such a great team at the county, and we, I think, work well together to make really good decisions for all of you. So I want to keep going.
Excellent, thank you. Now we have a quick icebreaker for you. So I'd like for you each to finish this sentence. I wish everyone could. Commissioner Morris.
I wish everyone could stop, breathe, and think about somebody else's point of view. Right now, where we are in our political discourse, I think it's rare to find people who are listening to one another deeply and trying to find out what commonalities we have in terms of our points of view, but also what things somebody else may know that you don't. So I wish we all could be a little bit more humble about our beliefs and a little bit more open to beliefs of others. I think it's a skill, the skill of civil discourse, which we desperately need to practice a lot more than we are. So I know we're going to have civil discourse tonight, so that's what I wish.
Excellent.
Yep.
Omer. Same question to you. I wish everyone could.
I wish everyone could take a really close look at our county budget. There are a lot of expenses in that budget that should not be there. one of the reasons why I'm running is to address the continuing increase in county taxes. For example, in this current fiscal year 2021, we have seen an increase over last year's county taxes of 3.47%, or $939,650 plus dollars. I'm reading from the Commissioner's letter to the Selectmen and to the county delegation and the Employees Council. Almost $1 million increase in taxes. Then that's on top of the almost $1,680,000 increase in taxes in the fiscal year 2020, which just completed as of the 1st of July. That was a 6.49% increase. And so there are things in the budget that need to be addressed, but I also have a lot of good ideas on how we can increase county revenue at the farm level and reduce expenses. For example, we don't need to be feeding the inmates at the House of Correction to the tune of almost $200,000 a year. We have a farm with dairy cows and beef and pigs and vegetables. We should be feeding the inmates off the farm, which was the original intent of county government. Thank you.
Thank you, Omer. All right. So, to get into our question and answer portion, this will start with you, Omer Ahern. What have you been working on in the last 2 years?
Well, the last 2 years, I've been serving the people of Wentworth, New Hampshire as a selectman. And that is a very demanding position. There's a lot of needs within our local communities. And having served as a selectman, I have found that maybe there's some things that the county can do to help our various towns. Maybe we're doing some bulk purchasing, but other things. And one of the things that I want to do is I want to make sure the select boards or members of the select board by district are invited to attend at least one get-together at the county complex so that the selectmen can get a tour of the Department of Corrections, this very expensive county facility that is not being used to its maximum, and I have some ideas on how we can increase revenue in the Department of Corrections. And also, I have been serving a private school in working with the young people there. Just 2 weeks ago, I gave a little presentation on the New Hampshire and the United States Constitutions and how our government affects our people and how they, as young people, are going to be tested on the Constitution every day of their lives going forward. And they keep putting these little pieces of paper off to my left, and I think I'm out of time. But there's just so much that can be done in terms of increasing the revenue at Grafton County to help reduce the expenses and therefore reduce the taxes. That's why I'm running, to reduce the tax burden on our people. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Moore, same question.
What's the question again? I'm sorry. I was mesmerized.
What I know. What have you been working on in the last 2 years?
In the last 2 years. I've been working on the county budget. Yeah, so we can have a good discussion about county budget. We did not raise the amount of money to be asked for from the towns in Texas this year, so we kept that level. The budget itself goes up. It goes up for a lot of reasons that we are taking a look at, and we can talk further about, but partly because we have over 400 employees, all of whom get pay raises every year. It's almost automatic, and there are so many exogenous factors that we don't control that are determined by the state, by Medicaid reimbursement. There are so many factors that go into it. So we can have a conversation about the budget, and I love innovative ideas, and I want to talk about that, but I think we have a budget question coming up. So what I would like to talk about is one of the issues that is most important to me is the presence of folks who are suffering substance misuse disorder and or mental illness that are in our correctional facility or criminal justice involved. We have a mental health court in Grafton County. We have a drug court. I think they could be expanded. They do miraculous things for people in our communities, and very proud of them. But I think our law enforcement community and our correctional community is being asked to take up a burden that really belongs to the state, that belongs to the medical community, and we're suffering because we lack the resources in the state of New Hampshire to provide treatment for folks, and they should not end up in our Department of Corrections. That's not the place for them to be. So that's one of my most important issues.
Thank you. How has COVID-19 changed the interactions between you and your community members? And that's going to go to Commissioner Morris. Yeah.
I really miss real life. My constituents have found the telephone to be very useful, and I love it. I get these phone calls for people who want to talk about county issues, and it's like, yeah, I remember the telephone. It's wonderful, and I've spent hours talking to people on the telephone. So that's good, and that hasn't changed, or maybe it's even gotten better. I miss terribly community events. I miss the fun stuff, the parades, the old home days. But most of all, I miss the face-to-face interactions, talking about in community events, in forums. Before COVID hit, I was planning on working on a county-wide forum about sustainable agriculture and renewable energy. And I wanted to highlight some of the wonderful work that's being done in Grafton County, and to talk about how those could possibly be implemented to some degree at the county complex. So I had started that work, but COVID kind of sidelined that for now. I will not give it up. I think it's a really important thing to do. But I think the last thing that anybody needs right about now is another Zoom meeting. I don't know about anybody else, but I just don't think that quite does it. I think we all need to talk to one another and exchange ideas about where we want to go in the future. And there's a lot of exciting work that's being done out there in environmental sustainability, renewable energy, and I can't wait for us to get together as a community and talk about it face to face.
Thank you. Omer.
Yes, Zoom meetings are great. I've been doing a lot of legal education, CLEs through Zoom, Farm Bureau meetings, UNH cooperative extension meetings, the school meetings that I attend. And I'm getting information and getting to see people that I don't normally get to see, because being in Grafton County, if you're attending a meeting, some people have to travel 45 minutes to get to a meeting. So Zoom meetings, I'm getting to see people that maybe I don't always see. And there's a lot of learning that's going on. Right now, I'm finding out through the New Hampshire Farm Bureau Federation and Grafton County Farm Bureau that there's options, there's opportunities for young people to go into the meat processing business. Evidently, throughout New Hampshire and northern New England, meat processing facilities are closing down because they can't find any help to process the meat. So one of the things that I see as an opportunity for Grafton County is, and I'm a former state legislator, so I know how the legislation process works. As soon as the elections are over, I'm looking to ask our new elected representatives to introduce some legislation that will exempt Grafton County from the meat processing laws. New Hampshire has a law that allows meat processing to go on in New Hampshire under the auspices of the Department of Agriculture. But we could then provide some new learning opportunities for our inmates, because there's jobs out there for them. Plus, the inmates could then be eating meat off of our farm. And again, I want to talk more about that, and saving right off the bat almost $200,000. And again, I can't read what that is, but I guess my time is up.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. So before we jump back into the budget, I think that it's important for each of you to describe the position of county commissioner as you see it. And we'll start with you, Omer.
Okay. I was very fortunate to grow up at a county home. I grew up at the Sullivan County Home in Unity, New Hampshire, where my mom and dad, Omer and Rosa Ahern, served as the co-administrators of the nursing home. My dad was also the county jailer, and my dad was also the farm and woodlands manager. And living out in Unity and having to drive in a car every place you went, I got to hear a lot of the conversations that my mom and dad had about what they were doing to serve the people in the nursing home and the needs in the House of Correction and jail, and what could they do to bring in good revenues, because Sullivan County has a lot more woodlands than Grafton County. So I've had the honor to be a county commissioner in Sullivan County and in Grafton County, where the statute says we're primarily responsible for running the nursing home, running the Department of Corrections, and especially in Grafton County's case, running the farm and woodlands operation. There was an amendment to the statute a few years ago which allowed the commissioners to do other things. And I think that's where we're getting into trouble with our budget here in Grafton County. There are extraneous things that I think Grafton County is doing that should be done by the state. The state of New Hampshire has a Article 28A, which says if the state is imposing any new obligations on local government, the state is supposed to pay for it. And I think there's a lot of things that local government is paying for, the taxpayers are paying for, that the state should be coming up with the money for. So that's what I'm looking for, and I've brought that up before at the county commissioner meetings in the past, and I bring it up at our select board meetings, and I'm out of time again. Where is the time going on this?
We could do this for hours, I think.
I think so, yes, Marcia.
But we won't.
Thank you, Commissioner Morris.
So county government is really important because, it sort of fills that void between the municipal level and the state level. And yes, I agree with Elmer that there's a lot of downshifting that occurs that should not be occurring, but we don't, as commissioners, necessarily control that except to push back a little bit. The treasurers of some of the towns in our district have asked me, what do we actually get for the money that we send you? And I think it's a very good question, and I think a lot of our constituents don't really understand. If you do not have a loved one who is either criminal justice involved and or in our nursing home, then you may have pretty little to do with county government. But having a criminal justice system that serves our county is incredibly important. It keeps us all safe, hopefully, and it also provides that care so that we know that our friends, our family members, and our neighbors are taken care of at the end of their life. And that's an important thing. We do a really good job of that. County government does a really good job of that. County government in New Hampshire is a lot less powerful than it is in, say, Nebraska or other places in the country. We don't really have that much power. We do have oversight of the budget, and we do have a little bit of policy discretion. But it's a very limited position. And if I am reelected, one of the things that I would really like to do is take this position and advocate for things in the legislature that I think would be very helpful for the county. I think that's where some of the power will come from. I agree with Elmer on that one.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, now we're going to jump into the budget. What changes would you propose to the county budget? And we'll start with you, Commissioner Morris.
Well, this is not hypothetical for me. I live and breathe the county budget. And we are in the process, the commissioners, of looking at some larger structural issues that kind of fall by the wayside when you're doing the traditional January to July incremental budget process. So rather than go line item by line item, we're looking at some of the really big drivers. And one of them is this fact that we have so many employees and we don't control a lot of the factors. We don't control their the step and grade system that we have, which automatically promotes them and provides an automatic tax increase at the beginning of every fiscal year. I don't know that that's a bad system. I don't want to say that it is, but it is one of the things that we're looking at, that there might be some reform to that in the future. My big issue with the county budget is with energy. And it's not that we pay a non-competitive rate for energy. We pay a perfectly good rate. But we participate in a municipal light district, which takes a lot of the control away from the commissioners about how we manage our electrical needs. And I have a vision of solar panels on the top of the DOC. It makes a tremendous amount of sense. Or, solar farm installations that could reduce our electrical load. Unfortunately, there are tremendous obstacles to at present to being able to enact something like that. And so that is an area where I want to push further and see if we can't make some changes, some inroads.
Excellent. Thank you. Omer.
Over the years, unfortunately, the county commissioners have made some, I think, poor decisions in terms of energy usage. When the new county House of Correction, Department of Corrections building was built, the decision was made, rather than using wood chips, which would have provided more jobs for our local foresters and loggers, and given our landowners a place to sell some of their lower value wood chips, they put in an underground, what are they, the heating, excuse me? No, the biomass is separate. I'm talking about for the House of Correction. The underground heating system that doesn't work. It didn't work.
Geothermal.
Geothermal.
Yeah.
Excuse me, geothermal. It doesn't work. And so so the DLC is using its backup system, which is the propane. When I was a county commissioner, I pushed to get the wood chip plant in, which is now heating the entire facility other than the House of Correction. And that wood chip facility is saving, I think, in excess of $250,000 a year in oil, which is how we heated the facility before that. So these are the things that, ripping down the old jail. 4/5 of that old jail was built in 1984 and 1985. We could have used that space to help expand the needs of the Registry of Deeds. The county attorney was looking for more space. We're looking for storage space for our records. So some not good decisions have been made by the county commissioners to tear down things and put in things that weren't right. Ultimately, yes, it was the delegation that had to make those decisions. And Marcia was not on when some of those original bad decisions were made. But I was there when we voted to put in the wood-fired chip plant, and we could have had electricity in there, but that was vetoed. And I was on the short end of the vote to include electricity manufacturing with the heating when that biomass plant went in. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you both. That ends our question and answer portion. I will allow a 1-minute summary statement. And Omer, we're going to start with you.
Are we done?
Almost.
Hours.
Almost, yeah.
A summary?
Yep.
Summary. Anything we may not have touched upon, anything, but you got a minute, just a minute.
Okay. Again, why I'm running is because I'm concerned about the continuous year after year increase in taxes. Yeah, there's increase for the employees, and we are blessed with some great employees and some department heads. But one change that I would have not voted for was to split up the county executive director. And so we have now just created a new position paying $105,000 for a finance director, $105,000 in salary plus benefits. And we're still going to have the executive director. That's another, in my mind, poor decision, because the person that had both of those jobs did a good job. And when I was a county commissioner, we talked about it, and the person did not feel that it was really necessary at the time. This is not the time to be adding in new positions when we've got good people that can meet the needs of the county. And again, I think we need to look at other options on the farm, and there are. I have an option to put into place something that within 8 years would bring in $40,000 or $50,000 a year of new income just in the farm operations and the woodlands operations alone. Plus, we don't need to feed the inmates from the Cisco truck. We can feed the inmates very well and even better off of our own farm and vegetable operations. I'm trying to save money. I'm trying to find new sources of revenue for the county so that the taxes don't keep going up. And ultimately, the taxes are paid by the people. And we have a big elderly population here in Grafton County. They can't pay any more in taxes. We've got to give them a break. We've got to give our young families a break. And plus, the other thing we haven't even talked about is we're going to need a new nursing home in a few years when the baby boomers start coming online. And where are we going to build that new nursing home? I know where we can build that new nursing home, and we're going to find some good interns to work in that nursing home and save us some money. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Commissioner Morris.
I think you're being generous with us on time, but I kind of feel like we need it. You just introduced a whole bunch of issues. I'd like to say that we did not raise the amount to be raised from taxes for our constituents this time around. I'm very proud of the budget that we did this year. I don't see a lot of fat in the budget. It's very lean. I do see a lot of potential in the future for change to the budget. I'm not sure, and the reason why we did create the finance director position, which Omer just alluded to, was so that we can make those strategic changes. And we're talking about big changes, not the little line-by-line tweaking that's not going to make a difference in anybody's tax bills. The society is changing. COVID is changing the situation for the county. Bail reform has changed the situation for the county, reducing the population of the county jail. A lot of exogenous factors, a lot of big societal changes are occurring, and it will require a tremendous amount of bandwidth to be able to plan strategically over the course of the next 10 years for what is to come. And we want to do that with as much analysis and as much data as we can. That is why we have the finance director position. It is incredibly important. We will also be hiring someone else as a county administrator who, the hope is, will have that strategic planning capability and be able to look at some of these much larger issues that we need to tackle as we adapt to these very big changes coming down the pike. That is all intended to save us money and make us more efficient and make us smarter at the county. And so I am very proud of that decision that we made this past year. It's going to pay off down the line, I am sure. Again, I am thrilled that we have set ourselves up to be in a strong financial position, to be able to go through the strategic planning process that we have ahead of us, and I'm really excited about doing that for the future. And stay tuned.
Thank you. Thank you to Commissioner Marsha Morris and Omer Ahern Jr. for being here with us this evening and sharing your passion for the work that you do serving your communities. And thank you, and stay tuned. We have the New Hampshire House of Representatives District 8 coming up next. Welcome back. We have the New Hampshire House of Representatives District 8 candidates with us currently. And going down the line, we have incumbent Representative Sally Fellows, incumbent Representative Suzanne Smith, and incumbent Representative Joyce Weston. Thank you, ladies, for being here. So right now, we'll like to move into opening remarks. And I would ask Representative Weston to start. You have a minute and a half.
Thank you. My name is Joyce Weston, and I live here in Plymouth. I represent Plymouth, Hebron, and Holderness, and I'm a member of the Commerce and Consumer Affairs Committee. This is an interesting committee that deals with a lot of nuts and bolts issues that keeps our government running smoothly. We deal with business, banking, insurance, condos, restaurants, things like that. And basically, we have a very congenial committee that work together. A lot of our bills are passed, are recommended unanimously. And I think it's great work. I really enjoy it. I've learned an enormous amount being part of that committee. And I look forward to getting back to seeing my friends on both sides of the aisle and getting back to work.
Thank you very much. Representative Fellows.
I'm Sally Fellows. I live in Holderness. I moved to Plymouth when I was 12 years old, graduated from Plymouth High School. After college, I came back here for a short time, and then I enlisted in the Army, and I was in the Army for 3 years. After that, I got a master's degree in education administration from UMass Amherst. I worked at Plymouth State for a couple of years, and since then I've worked at the State Department of Education for 30 years. My job there included school funding. One of the things I did was help legislators with the adequacy aid formula. That's the largest state aid package to school districts this year. It's about $600 million. I also worked on setting property tax rates for cooperative districts like the Pemmy-Baker district. So I have a background in school data, school finance, and state funding. And I've served for one term, and I'm running for re-election. My major issue is property taxes and school funding.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Representative Smith.
Thank you, and thanks for having us here. I'm Suzanne Smith. I live in Hebron, and I represent, as do Sally and Joyce, the towns of Plymouth, Hebron, and Holderness. I'm running to serve my 7th term in the New Hampshire House, and the last 2 years I have been the chair of the Resources, Recreation, and Development Committee. It's another one of those committees that deals with a lot of different things, but a lot of what we do is healthy water, clean water, whether it's our lakes, like Squam Lake or Newfound or the Pemigewasset River, and we work together in a mostly nonpartisan way, as many of the committees do. And we also work on issues related to state parks, boating on the lakes, and OHRVs, ATVs have been a big thing this year. I really look forward to getting back to work with my colleagues on the committee, and I'm glad to be here.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So now for our icebreaker question, kind of loosen us up for this segment. What books are you currently reading right now or have most recently finished? I know we've probably had a lot of time indoors recently, so hopefully you've got some reading down. I'll start with Representative Smith.
I am in the middle of the Splendid and the Vile, which is a book about Winston Churchill and World War II, and I just finished Louise Penny's new book because I love Louise Penny's mysteries.
Excellent. Thank you. Representative Weston.
Right. Well, this has been a summer to explore some lighter fiction, and Where the Crawdads Sing was one that I really loved. And right now I'm in the middle of The Return, which is about a man from Libya who lived in London and now is returning to his home, which is a little more serious, but it's nice to have this time in the summertime to hit some lighter reading. I'm a real fan of history, so I do a lot of biography and history.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Representative Fellows.
So I'm almost finished with a John Grisham novel because that's a great way to forget about everything else that's going on and just immerse yourself in something that's not going to get you excited or upset. But before that, I read How to Become an Anti-Racist, which is an excellent book, and I would suggest it to anyone. And one thing that did is inspire me to want to work on racism and bias next term. And I have some ideas already that I partly garnered from that book on how to address racism and systemic racism in state government.
Excellent. Thank you very much. All right, great reads. All right, so we'll jump into our questions. First question, what political issues have you been working on in the past 2 years? Representative Fellows.
Well, when I was elected, I said that I would work to reduce property taxes and to get more money to schools, which we did. You know, a collective. It's always a collective issue. You know, effort. We did that last year. One of the things I will have to continue working on is making sure that the aid doesn't get cut this year. So that's my primary focus. But as I just mentioned, I want to work on the racism and bias issue.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Representative Smith.
Well, it's interesting because I was like trying to remember what I had worked on in the last 2 years, and the first thing that came to mind was Northern Pass. And finally in late spring 2019, the Supreme Court agreed with the site evaluation committee that Northern Pass was not a good idea for New Hampshire. And that's something I've spent about the last 8 years working, fighting the project, or at least trying to have it be buried along the interstate rather than going through people's yards and disrupting the area. So that was a huge coup, and that's something I worked with legislators on both sides of the aisle, the House and the Senate, and it was something I spent a lot of time on, and then it was so exciting to be sitting watching the Supreme Court hand down their decision. The other thing is, as a whole, we repealed the death penalty in the House and the Senate, and then the governor vetoed it, and the veto was overridden on both levels. So those are two things, and there are many more. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. Representative Weston.
Right, well, being in commerce, we worked a lot on issues that have to do with insurance. And the issues that we deal with affect everybody in the Granite State. Specifically, we limited the cost of insulin to $35 a month, which is fantastic, out-of-pocket expenses. And we also reduced the cost of EpiPens, because anybody who has to use EpiPens knows that they are ridiculously expensive. We also protected fertility care for couples who need it, and ensured that people could get long-term Lyme disease care. Our issues span all kinds of things. Of course, you know, you work in your committee, and there you work on specific issues. Then when you go to the House to vote, you're voting on things that make you very proud, like repealing the death penalty and things like that. So it's a balance between the two. One issue that I found very interesting this last term was we studied the trust industry in New Hampshire. And our fear was that New Hampshire was going to become like the Cayman Islands, and it would become a money laundering state. So we went to some length to make sure that the trust industry was regulated enough that that wouldn't be the case. So very happy with that one.
Excellent. Thank you all for your hard work on those issues. How has COVID-19 changed the interactions between you and your constituents? Representative Smith.
Well, we'll start with this room. We're not at a table. We're sitting 6 feet apart. I have not been going door to door, which is something that is huge during a campaign year. And it really, it's sad that we have to limit that exposure, but it's really safe for us and for the people that we would be visiting. So I have been trying to reach out to neighbors and friends and talk to them so that everyone knows I'm running. I've been putting up signs, and we've been, as a team, we've put together newspaper ads and done a mailing, which is really different. But I'm still getting phone calls from people who need help with issues, and so that's one of the most fun parts of the job, that being able to assist constituents. And so I'm doing that, but it's very different.
Thank you. Representative Weston.
Yeah, I think Suzanne and I are pretty much on the same page. A lot of what she said applies to me as well. And you know, we are working together as a team and doing more outreach in terms of the newspapers. And this is certainly a big help here. This is wonderful to be able to have this outreach to the community. I have found that I've gotten quite a few emails from constituents with specific problems, and COVID doesn't affect that at all. We can still track down the right department, the right phone number, and particularly in the insurance area, I've helped quite a few people who had trouble with their insurance when COVID hit. So it's been useful to know the players at Anthem and Harvard Pilgrim, because I've been able to help some people work through some issues on that. So it's a different world. I hope that we don't have to go through it again.
Thank you. Representative Fellows.
So I can just echo the same sentiments about not being able to talk to people. So what I did is I focused on what I could do to keep people safe in this COVID environment. So two things. I found that people were going to the Livermore Falls Recreation Area back in May when it wasn't officially opened. I went there a Saturday afternoon. There were 100 people there, but the restroom was closed because the governor had an executive order that said restrooms couldn't be open in the state parks unless there was someone to clean them every 2 hours. So I contacted the Park and Recs Division and explained the problem, and they said they were short-staffed, but within a week they were able to find staff to open it up, and the restrooms were open, and lots and lots of people, mostly from out of state, enjoyed our natural resource. And a similar thing happened with Squam Lake. I got a call that there were 3 times as many people as normal on Squam Lake, so I contacted Marine Patrol, and they were able to get 2 full days of extra coverage each week, so to address the concerns with safety on Squam Lake.
Excellent. Thank you very much. How do you plan to provide affordable higher education on or offline so New Hampshire's graduates are not saddled with debt? Representative Fellows.
Me? Oh, me?
Yes.
I think that this is an issue that needs to be done in collaboration, addressed in collaboration with the colleges, the public colleges. I think that they're the best ones to propose changes, but I can tell you that online college has been around for a long time. What's different this time is the Zoom technology that allows the interactive communication between the instructors and the other students. And I think that this is a major game changer, and I think that the colleges are going to know that and are going to be able to figure out how to take advantage of that. And another program that's been going on for more than a decade is students can take courses in high school that qualify for community college credit. I think that with the Zoom technology, that the actual community college and Plymouth State and other colleges can offer those courses to high school students, and there's a lot of opportunity to rearrange the schedule so that students can finish up more quickly, and that will make it more affordable.
Excellent. Thank you. Representative Smith.
Since 2010, when the university system's budget was slashed hugely, people and schools have been looking for ways to better address the affordability of college. And even though more money has been, in fact, in the last budget, we increased funding to the university system and to community colleges. But as Representative Fellows said, the ability to take courses in high school, take AP courses, and then go to community college, take courses there, and then move to the university system, I think is a better option for a lot of people, especially locals. The university system is working, it's a constant back and forth in the legislature to improve education, and then you have the other side which says we shouldn't be funding the university and people should be able to pay their own way. So it's really challenging, and Representative Fellows' ideas about the Zoom technology, it's huge. That is huge.
Excellent. Thank you. Representative Weston.
Yes, and to add to that, PSU in particular services, over half of their students come from the North Country. They come from Grafton and Coos County, and often don't have a lot of resources themselves. There are scholarships available, but I think that the policy has to come from the state. I think the state should be supporting our state schools more, because New Hampshire has one of the highest state tuitions in the country, which is really a sad thing. It makes me embarrassed. But PSU in particular also can't do a lot of their teaching online or through Zoom because they have hands-on programs like the physical therapy. That's something that has to be done in the classroom itself. So they are in a tight situation that's difficult, but I think that without some more support from the state, and that's a matter of priorities, the university system is really getting squeezed. So.
Excellent, thank you. Given the impending revenue shortfalls from the COVID-19 pandemic, how do you anticipate adjustments will be made to compensate? Budget cuts, layoffs, and the such. Representative Smith?
Well, right off the bat, the governor has already requested agencies, all the state agencies present their budget to the governor about now, right after the election. And he has already asked them to, flatline it or reduce it by, I want to say 10 or 20%. So right there, we're taking very stringent methods to cut back on everything. And so agency heads are kind of scrambling trying to do that. The budget that was passed in 2019 had a clause about business taxes that they would go up, I think, 0.2 or 0.3% unless, if revenues did not drop below a certain number. And there was huge concern in the spring that we needed to get rid of that trigger that would raise property taxes because of COVID. But when analysis was done in June and July, the revenues were still doing well. So that rate will be going up in January, and then if revenues drop a lot next year, which they most likely will, then something else may happen. But that's a little bit of support that's coming in the form of business taxes. But otherwise, everyone's kind of going to be tightening the belt in a lot of ways.
Thank you. Representative Weston.
One of the things that we've been talking about in our policy meetings that we've had with other legislators is that if any bill has a fiscal note attached to it, which means that it's going to cost the government money, it's going to be a really hard sell this year. So I think in general we're being very careful about not adding anything to the budget. That being said, there are some issues that really are important, and just because it may require another employee at the Department of Environmental Services, it's hard to say that we should put aside or kick the can down the road. So I think in general people are being very cognizant of the fact that we do have a shortfall, and we're going to do the best we can. But the government does have to keep going. So I think we'll get through this. I'm an optimist by nature, and I'm hopeful that the country has learned some lessons and will be able to work in more efficient, economical ways, and we'll find a way to get through it.
Thank you. Representative Fellows.
So when there's a revenue shortfall, the first thing that happens is there's a hiring freeze. This is standard practice, and the governor has already put in place a hiring freeze. Doesn't mean they can't hire any new employees, but there has to be a really compelling reason to fill a vacant position. And the very last thing you want to do is have layoffs. So I think what's going to happen is similar to what happened during the Great Recession. During that time period, starting in 2009, the federal government sent significant amount of money to the state, and it's at least $500 million. And I was responsible for one program that was $160 million that the state used to fund the school adequacy aid over 2 years, and another program that was $40 million that was sent federal money directly to school districts to pay salaries. So I expect to see the same kind of program develop this winter or in December or January, especially if Joe Biden gets elected president. What we'll see is a package that it will have aid for businesses and hospitals, but it'll also have significant amount of money to help municipalities and to help the state government, because almost all of those people in Concord at one time were state representatives or governors, and they understand those issues very well.
Thank you very much. With New Hampshire having some of the highest property taxes in the nation, what solutions do you have to support our schools, which make up the majority of our tax bills, while preserving the homeownership dream? And this would go to Representative Weston.
Oh, you would start with me. Well, I think property taxes are a definite problem here in Plymouth. And there again, it's a matter of priorities from the state government. Right now, our governor, it seems to favor charter schools. And I went to public school here in New Hampshire. I got a great education, and I think I personally would do anything to keep strong public schools. There may be some solutions. Nobody wants to lose their elementary school, but if the student body is low, they may have to combine some schools or whatever. But in terms of property taxes, there are other things to look at. Like I've been working on the ambulance reimbursement rate from the insurance companies, which is abysmally low. Believe it or not, in Plymouth, it's 13.2% of the actual cost. So that's something that I'll be introducing legislation on this winter if I get elected. So I think there are other ways to deal with property taxes besides the school system, even though that is a big chunk. The other thing is that statement about the dream of home ownership. And I think we have to pay attention to demographics because there are a lot of millennials and next geners who maybe don't want that. They are a group that is not as much interested in the accumulation of property as our generation was. They are looking at other options, and we may not want to build a lot of single-family homes. It might be better to do clustered housing or something along that line. So we need to pay attention to the demographics of the young generation.
Thank you. Representative Fellows?
So the most important thing that will shape how we respond to this situation is the Supreme Court ruling that we will hear in a couple of months. The Conval School District has sued the state, saying that the $3,700 per student the state gives in adequacy aid is not enough, and it should be more like $10,000 per student. So their ruling will shape our decision. But I must say that there are only 2 states in the union that do not have either an income tax or a sales tax. One is New Hampshire and the other is Alaska. Alaska has a lot of oil revenue and we do not. So we need to start asking ourselves, how is this sustainable in New Hampshire? I think the people of New Hampshire need to let go of that 50-year-old pledge not to have any new taxes. And instead they should be saying, how can we have taxes that are fair? And so I think that's important. The revenue right now that funds governments in towns is being raised. 2/3 of that money is coming from property taxpayers, and only 1/3 is coming from other state revenues.
Thank you. Representative Smith?
The funding of education has been a challenge and has been challenged in court back in the Claremont decision, and then now it's at the Supreme Court again. And education funding in the Education Committee and in the Finance Committee is very problematic because you've got, it's very problematic. So in the last session, we passed a law which formed a commission. It's a commission to study education funding, and it was allocated $500,000 to hire a group of experts to put together, and they have submitted their first draft of the state of adequacy in New Hampshire. And the members of the committee, the Education Funding Committee, which has been meeting like once or twice a week for months and months, they are working on that, and they're hoping to have some kind of a consensus and an answer as to a direction to go to better fund education in New Hampshire. And they're hoping by 2021, so not too far away.
Thank you. If elected to the legislature this term, what would you do to continue the much-needed rollout of broadband to ensure internet access for all communities in New Hampshire? And would you go beyond broadband? Representative Fellows.
There's a new program that is being used right now to expand broadband. A town can use their bonding power to finance the stringing of fiber optic cables through their community. And the way this program works is the town puts out a request for proposal to businesses to build this network. And then when they come to an agreement with a company, that it's that company and not the taxpayers that will pay off the bond. This arrangement works because municipalities can get much lower bond rates than businesses can, and it lets them spread the payments over 30 years. So that's a good program, and I think more towns can utilize that. The governor has already given some COVID money to some towns who are putting that in place. Bristol is one of them. So I think that's a good program. There are other grant programs, federal grants that can help with that. I think there just needs to be more of it, and I'm encouraged. In terms of going beyond that, I'm not entirely sure what you mean, but I do have one concern that when these networks are built, that the lowest rate, the basic rate for people to connect is probably going to be something like $60 a month. So I'm concerned that some people will not be able to afford that. So maybe we can work out some kind of subsidy or arrangement with the provider to have a real basic rate so that everybody can get connected.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Representative Smith.
As near as 5 years ago, towns weren't even able to bond legally to get broadband. I mean, we had a fight in the legislature a few years ago because towns wanted the right to be able to bond, and legislators fought it. Many legislators fought it, saying that towns would become irresponsible. So fortunately, we got rid of that impediment, and towns are doing it. Nick Coates in Bristol is doing an amazing job, and he's also educating a lot of other people on how to do it. But it is unconscionable that in New Hampshire, 2 hours from Boston, 5 hours from New York, sometimes talking on your cell phone or getting internet is so frustrating. And COVID has made this so apparent when you're having a conversation or a class online and all of a sudden the person goes out, or they freeze for 5 minutes and then they come back. And I can talk to my daughter when she was in India 8 years ago, and it was as though she was next door, whereas if I get off the interstate at Bristol, and I get no reception until I'm almost to Hebron, and that's cell phone service, not internet, but they're linked together, and I think it's all very important that we do a lot, that we improve that.
Great. Thank you very much. Representative Weston.
And of course, I agree totally with the need and the need of rural areas that don't have resources. The bonding will help a great deal. We're actually using that same idea to try to get a solar array at the transfer station here in Plymouth, which is, we're going to be meeting with the select board next Monday on that issue. But I also think that the school kids up in Coas County and Grafton County need laptops as well. So I'm not sure where that money's going to come from. But I think it's something, it's not just the internet. If you don't have a laptop to work on, you can't really have online school. So it's a big issue, and it's probably going to end up in science and technology, which is a committee I'm working pretty closely with right now on climate change. So we'll see where they go with it.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Should non-resident students domiciled on New Hampshire colleges and university campuses be allowed to vote in New Hampshire elections? Representative Smith.
In 2011, when I became first aware that there was this huge discrepancy as to whether college students should be able to vote in the town they go to school in, Representative Sean Jasper, who later became Speaker of the House, conservative Republican, said, I went to college in New Hampshire. I spent more time in the town that I was going to college in than I did where my parents lived. And I knew more about what was going on in that town than I knew about the town I grew up in. And so he was, at that time, saying, yes, students should be able to do this. And I agree. I mean, how many businesses in Plymouth are run by people who came to PSU, or Plymouth State College at the time, to go to school and stayed? I mean, I have neighbors in Hebron who came to PSU for school and then they stayed and raised their families here. So I think students, many students are invested in the college community and in the town, and yes, I think they should be able to vote here.
Thank you. Representative Weston.
Right, I agree with that. I would say yes, they should be allowed to vote. And people come here for shorter periods of time, not just to go to school. There are temporary jobs. You might have to come and help a family member who is disabled or getting elderly, or maybe it's the National Guard. There are other reasons besides going to PSU that you may come to Plymouth for a couple years at a time. If you're a resident here, you should be able to vote here. This is your home. So I'm totally in favor of it.
Thank you. Representative Fellows.
I agree that they should be able to vote where they are domiciled in college. And the reason for that is that, except for this year, before you can vote, you have to be registered. And this year you can register through the mail, but normally you cannot. You can only register in person at your town clerk's office. And students, unless they plan way ahead, which we know students don't always do, they would have to register at home during the summer before they come to school, because once they get to the college campus, they don't have any access to register in person at home. So that's the reason that I think they should be able to vote here, because it's really the only way they can easily get registered to vote.
Excellent, thank you. So that wraps up our question portion of the evening. I'll allow 1-minute summaries from each of you, and we'll start with Representative Weston.
Thank you. Well, I didn't have an opportunity to mention my climate action plan, so I'd like to very quickly mention that. I think climate change is one of the biggest issues we have right now, and that is my primary focus going into the next session. We want to have a plan that will have the DES analyze greenhouse gas emissions on a regular basis, create a plan, and have to report on progress on that plan, which I think will get us in line with the surrounding states. We are the only state in New England who does not do anything, and the cost of doing nothing is higher than the cost of doing something. So I do hope I have an opportunity to get to Concord to put my heart and soul into that plan. Thanks.
Thank you. Representative Fellows?
I have a long history with school funding, so I will be ready right away when we get the Supreme Court decision on how that will tell us how we may have to change the way we're funding schools. So I will be prepared for that, and I will work to make sure that low income and moderate income income people are not saddled with even more property tax. I want to see some system that's fair in the distribution of aid and also fair in the way we raise the aid. And then the new issue that I want to work on this year has to do with the systemic racism and bias. I think that education is a big component of that, and those are the reasons that I hope you will vote for me.
Thank you. Representative Smith?
One of the major issues that we dealt with this year in the legislature and in my committee, something that passed unanimously out of the committee and then continued on and actually made it to become law, is tightening the standards on per and polyfluoroalkyl chemicals, which are PFAS, and they're chemicals that we're just learning more and more about every year. And there is a whole swath of area in the southern part of the state where people cannot drink their water because it is contaminated with these chemicals. And they are found in bottled drinking water. They're also found in firefighting foam, which I think we've done a good job with stopping using that particular type of foam in the state. And also containers, when you get a to-go container, if it's cardboard but it doesn't ever fall apart, that's because there are PFAS in it. So in my committee, we'll be working on legislation and methods to come up with better solutions than that to try to make New Hampshire's drinking water safe for everyone, and we won't have all these contaminants going into our wastewater from people disposing of products made with these chemicals. So that'll be a big deal.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Thank you. This concludes our evening. Thank you to Representative Sally Fellows, Suzanne Smith, and Joyce Weston for being here with us this evening and for sharing your passion for serving your communities of New Hampshire. This does conclude our evening for the candidates event. Thank you all for watching. Thank you to Pemmy Baker Television for making this possible. And thank you to all of the candidates for sharing their valuable time with us this evening. If you'd like to view this segment again after this evening, it will be playing on this station. It can also be found on the Pemmy Baker TV YouTube channel up until the election. And please remember to get out and vote on Tuesday, November 3rd, only a few short days away. Thank you. I'm Sarah Holland. Have a great night.